Hello everyone, we're the team from the National University of Singapore. And this semester, our project was to draft a new model bilateral investment treaty for a developing country. Why was this new model BIT needed? After our review, we found that most of the beneficiaries' existing treaties were drafted in the traditional OECD model, which only set out obligations of states, use broad and vague formulations, include few exceptions, and rely on traditional ISDS system. Such old-generation treaties are unfavorable for states for several reasons. Firstly, the asymmetrical obligations cause difficulty to hold investors accountable. Secondly, the vague treaty languages give a great deal of discretion for tribunals and legal certainty for states. Thirdly, the few exceptions leave less flexibility for states' regulatory right. And fourthly, the traditional ISDS system is criticized for the absence of amicable dispute settlement, the cost and duration of the proceeding, and the appointment of arbitrators. Ultimately, a number of cases were brought based on these old treaties, and states have paid a large sum of money for them. According to UNCTAD, as of December 2020, there are 1,104 cases brought by investors against the states, out of which over 98% were based on treaties signed before 2010. In 137 cases of them, the respondent state paid damages of over $10 million. And in the three famous cases filed by the former shareholders of Yukos Oil Company, the claimant investors were awarded a total of over $50 billion.
One key concern in the treaty drafting process was its scope. Here, the state had a clear vision of the type of investors and investments it sought to attract. As such, we tailored the definitions of the material, personal, and temporal scope to suit its developmental objectives, while reducing any exposure to undesired investor claims.
So the first step in our treaty drafting process was to identify modern treaties that have shifted away from the traditional OECD style of treaty drafting. And some of the treaties which we referred to in our project include the 2016 Morocco-Nigeria BIT, the EU-Vietnam IPA, as well as the North American Free Trade Agreement. And on the substantive front, these modern treaties differ from traditional style in two ways. Firstly, they tend to articulate in greater detail what substantive obligations are being imposed on the host state. And secondly, they often include mechanisms that preserve the host state's discretion in enacting measures that may negatively affect the foreign investors' business in the host state. And these improvements are important because they often address unfavorable or even unreasonable restrictions that arbitral tribunals have imposed on the host state previously in past arbitrations between investors and the host state.
On the procedural front, we explored various investor-state dispute settlement reforms. Here we examined evolving attitudes of the international community towards investor-state arbitration on matters such as cost, transparency, and arbitrator selection. Recommendations were introduced after studying ongoing initiatives, such as the EU's judicialization of ISDS and the UNSTRAL Working Group 3's 8 streams of reform. Ultimately, we delivered a suite of recommendations covering the lifespan of a potential claim, from amicable dispute settlement preceding arbitration to the enforcement of awards post-arbitration. Through this experience, we developed a better appreciation of the meticulous work that goes into treaty drafting. With each article, we had to ensure that the text of the article and the accompanying commentary were both sufficiently detailed and accurate, while also being user-friendly and comprehensible. In setting treaty standards, we also had to actively balance the beneficiaries' interests and concerns with broader trends in international investment law. And of course, we wanted the treaty to be coherent as a whole. That meant constant work, constant coordination, and multiple drafts across all 8 members of our team. Thankfully, we were guided by experienced and dedicated mentors throughout the process, whose assistance was pivotal in bringing the project
Overall,
together.
it was an interesting experience because we were able to participate at the forefront of the sea change that is happening in the IIA universe, where an increasing number of treaties are drafted to better protect the host state's discretion, and many of them are also geared towards goals apart from economic growth between the signatories. And this includes concerns about the environment as well as about human rights. And it would be interesting to see where this entire change brings us to in the forthcoming future. But in the meantime, we also hope that the model BIT, which we have drafted, does come in handy for the beneficiary in its future negotiations as well.